Test 1 2 3. Test 1 2 3.
All right. The California Racial Equity Meeting is called to order at 1:30 on Wednesday, July 17th in Riverside, California. Actually make that 1:34 to be exact. As we begin today's meeting, we want to note a couple of items. First, as we continue to engage guest speakers, presenters, and the public, we want to name that the information and the opinions expressed by presenters or public commenters before the Commission reflects the views of the speakers. They do not necessarily represent the views of the Commission or the Governor's Office of Planning and Research. Second, as a reminder, as a public body, public comment is critical to the work of the Commission, and we allow public input at all meetings. However, we stand united with other Californians in condemning hate and recognizing the harms that hate causes. A hate act is a hostile representation or expression or action committed, in whole or in part, because of a person's actual or perceived identity or identities or characteristics, including race, color, disability, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, or gender, including gender identity, and or because that person is part of a protected group. The rich diversity among our population in California is one of our state's greatest assets, and we are committed to supporting and protecting all people in California. As a reminder, if you are a victim or witness to hate, racism, or bullying, you can report the incident and receive free support through the California versus Hate Resource Line. The hotline will help you identify next steps and help connect you to resources including legal, financial, mental health, and mediation services. You can report hate by calling 833-8-NO-HATE or visit caversushate.org. The following land acknowledgement has been adapted from the City of Riverside's acknowledgement. We acknowledge with gratitude that the City of Riverside is on the traditional and ancestral lands of the Cahuilla Nation, the Gabrielino Tongva people, the Payomco Wishom, the Liseño Indians, the Yahavi Atam clan of the Mariam and the Sereno. The land on which we gather today and its surrounding areas are still home to many indigenous communities. For many millennia, these Native American peoples lived and thrived despite experiencing great adversity with the arrival of non-Native peoples. Inland Empire Native American peoples share a common environment and were linked through cultural practices such as basketry, bird singing, storytelling, and hunting and gathering their foods. We are grateful for all the indigenous people who continue to care for and remain interconnected with this land. We promise to be conscientious stewards of this land for future generations and are committed to ensuring inclusion of indigenous people to inform the California Racial Equity Commission. Our agenda for this meeting covers 9 agenda items. We have hard copies of the agenda and other relevant meeting materials available in the room. Materials are also available online at racialequity.opr.ca.gov. Dr. Estes, can you please provide a brief overview of the agenda for today?
Thank you, Commissioner Wood. If we can go ahead and get the agenda up on the screen for the folks watching online as well as in the room. We are currently in agenda item 1, the welcome. We will follow that with public comment on matters not on the agenda. Then we'll move into commission business around the approval of the March 21st meeting minutes from Delano. I, the Executive Director, will provide a report with an action item voting on the logo We will then take a 15-minute recess and then go into committee reports and discussion amongst the commission. We'll then receive next steps for staff action and then adjourn the meeting. Dr. Wood? Looks like we are on agenda item continuing with the welcome. We do want to acknowledge that we do have some distinguished guests in the audience and that we may be receiving additional distinguished guests through the day. And so with that, I would love to welcome Mayor Patricia Locke-Dawson, City of Riverside, to join us at the podium and provide welcoming remarks. We appreciate you being here today.
Thank you for having me today, and thanks for being here. I really appreciate that you chose Riverside. So thank you. We have a lot of work to do, not just here, but throughout our state, throughout our country. It's an important time in our history to be doing this work. So I'm just pleased to be here with you all and to welcome our distinguished visitors, including representatives from local tribal communities, community-based organizations, residents, and others here in person and also joining us virtually. Racial equity has long been a priority to me personally and to the City of Riverside. I served on our school board for 9 years, where I got to know Gabe and others, a diverse school board of which we're very cognizant of the differences between our students and how we manage that. So we have not just equal opportunity, but equal outcome. That was something I was very passionate about. And the City of Riverside has been doing this work as well. In 2020, our City Council adopted a resolution titled Racism is a Public Health Crisis. Many other cities did this as well. But it eventually led to, in our city, approval of a Riverside anti-racist vision. And we have groups here now working anti-racist Riverside, and they work with us to help guide us. And I have the Mayor's Multicultural Forum that helps guide us in our decisions when they're involving people who may not look, think, or talk like us, right? So we need input on that. And since then, our city has worked to embed our commitment to racial equity throughout all that we do, including our creation, shepherding, and operationalization of the Envision Riverside 2025 strategic plan, which includes a cross-cutting thread. It's written down, it's in there, of equity across our strategic priorities, goals, actions, and metrics. And in fact, I invited some of our staff here today. I have somebody from our Community and Economic Development Department, Pam, who's here with us today in the back. Thank you for being here. That touches everything we do in our community, so I think it's important that we have staff here to hear what goes on with the commission. We're also home to pivotal organizations working to advance racial equity, and these include things like our Center for Social Justice and Civil Liberties, Civil Rights Institute of Inland Southern California, the Cheech Marin Center for Chicano Arts and Culture, and the Harada House. And collectively, these and many other great organizations promote the education, policy, and culture that tell integral stories of racial equity and community advocacy in the region so that we may continue to build upon the work for a more equitable future. So we're also proud to join the collective of regions across the state of California who've hosted the historic work that you're doing on the Racial Equity Commission. We recognize that your work is critical to supporting our continued progress in growing racial equity across Riverside, the Inland Empire, and beyond. And while we've made strides, I know there's still much to be done to eliminate racial disparities in education, housing, healthcare, and many other facets of our everyday lives. And given the work ahead and its importance, I'd like to thank the public for attending and participating in this important dialogue, including those who have traveled or who are listening from afar. My hope is that this meeting will spark robust conversation that informs the work of the Commission, whose work in turn will inform the advancement of racial equity in Riverside as we live out our equity commitments. So thank you to the members of the public, community organizations, tribal community representatives, and the Commission for being here today. I'm inspired by the thought of what is possible when we don't worry about limitations, right? I'm inspired by what is possible when we bring together all of our different perspectives. And I really look forward to engaging with you all. And I'm just thrilled you're here. I'm so happy to have you here. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mayor Lockdawson. As we await an additional elected official to join us, we do want to see if there are any other elected officials, leaders, or staff representing an elected official with us here today that we haven't mentioned. You're welcome to provide any welcome or greetings on behalf of your organization or your person. Please feel free to come to the podium.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karina Quintanilla. I am mayor of the city of Palm Desert. I am here to speak on behalf of not only my community regarding anybody who is troubled by respiratory illnesses. I am an asthmatic. I suffer daily with the consequences of the wind that we've experiencing with the tropical storm that came in. It washed away a lot of our topsoil that people don't think sand doesn't absorb water. We're not the beach sand. We now no longer worry about PM10. We are gravely concerned about PM2.5. Those microgranules will be in our system causing long-term effects. At least in Palm Desert, we have access to resources and communication, and I've heard from a lot of people in the eastern Coachella Valley, in unincorporated areas, and people in Imperial County that they often don't hear about some of these events until after decisions are made. And whereas we can't reach every single person, I think we can do more to try. I think that not only do we often look at being bilingual and offering things in Spanish, but we need to recognize that there are other languages such as Purepecha. We have Filipinos that work in the farms as well, where we tend to be looking at a narrow vision of who we are supporting. So on behalf of those residents, I implore you, on behalf of, as an educator, I urge you to no longer put out requests for proposals that are for private companies. The state is already funding the Cal State system to receive practitioners, the UC system to get our researchers. We have PhD students that are very qualified to provide relevant data from their own communities. The state would get a better return on their investment. We would be using public policy directly from those that are researching it, not hypothetically from a second or third hand research. So I urge you again, knowing that the next session in the IE in that region will be March 25th, there's a lot of time to do great outreach. I'm thankful for all you do. I'm thankful for all of the data you're able to disseminate to let us know the public health issue that we're facing. So I thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Quintanilla, for your remarks. And we are also joined by Assembly Member Dr. Corey Jackson of the 60th District here in the state. And Dr. Jackson, we welcome any remarks you may have that you would like to provide. We've got a podium here, and I believe that microphone works there as well. So please, if you have any remarks.
Thank you very much, Commissioners. Thank you for coming here to the Inland Empire. Such an important place to be able to discuss these issues. Obviously, given our region's history, given the data that you all are privy to, obviously we have to do all that we can to push the state forward. And I would just urge you to be as aggressive as possible so that California can once again begin to lead in what does it mean to be an anti-hate, anti-racist, and anti-xenophobic state. Looking forward to seeing the work that you all, your final product, and looking forward to ensuring that all the recommendations that you all make are implemented in the state of California. Thank you all very much for the work that you're doing.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. We appreciate your attendance and being present with us. It really means a lot to have you, as well as Mayor Lock-Dawson, here with us, and Mayor Quintanilla. We thank these leaders for making time to be here today, especially within their busy schedules. You know, the knowing that we have elected officials and their leadership being present at these meetings really do mean a lot and create that atmosphere of we're in this all together, and there is the recommendations that come from an advisory body like the commission and the opportunity for elected officials like yourselves to create policies and practices within our government structures to help advance ending structural racism and really advancing the equity that we know each and every one of us deserves. At this point, I will turn it back over to our chair, Dr. Luke Wood, to move us through the establishment of quorum and public comment process.
Augustine Arila, our External Affairs Manager for Strategic Growth Council, will lead the roll call to establish a quorum and to provide an overview of the public comment process.
Thank you. I will begin roll call. Commissioner Virginia Hedrick.
Present.
Commissioner John Kim.
Present.
Commissioner Gabriel Maldonado.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Traco Matthews.
Present.
Commissioner Jolie Onodera.
Present.
Commissioner Dr. Manuel Pastor.
Present.
Commissioner Yolanda Richardson.
Present.
Commissioner Angelica Salas.
Present.
Commissioner Candace Bowles.
Present.
Commissioner Dr. Luke Wood.
Present.
Commissioner Symbol Wright.
Present.
Thank you. We have all commissioners present and have quorum. Thank you to everyone joining us today online or by phone through the Zoom webinar platform. I'm here to provide some information to help guide us through the processes for this hybrid meeting, which we have designed with the intention of maximizing access by members of the public. Please note, we are providing interpretation services to Spanish. Estamos proporcionando servicios de interpretación en español, tanto en persona como en línea para esta junta. Si nos acompaña a través de Zoom, localice la barra de herramientas en la parte inferior de la ventana de Zoom. Busque el botón que dice Interpretación, que puede aparecer como un icono de globo terráqueo. Haga clic en el botón Interpretación para acceder a las opciones de interpretación de idiomas. Allí aparecerá una ventana emergente con una lista de idiomas disponibles para interpretación. Ahí puede seleccionar español. For those joining us through the webinar online via Zoom or by phone, please note that your microphone is automatically muted when you join. In order to minimize the risk of background noise, you will not be able to unmute your phone yourself. For those joining online via Zoom, please note that the webinar platform doesn't enable video for attendees, so we will not be able to see you. If you need technical assistance during the meeting or have a question about the meeting process, there are a few ways to contact us. If you are using the online Zoom webinar, the best way is by using the Q&A function with several members of the Racial Equity Commission team monitoring it. If you have joined by phone and have access to email, you can email racialequitycommission@opr.ca.gov. To submit in-person public comment, you can pick up a public comment card by the sign-in table outside or at any of the podiums located at the front of this room and return it to us up here at any moment prior to the agenda item you wish to comment on. If you plan to make public comment virtually, you must be joining the meeting via Zoom. Thank you. Back to you, Chair Wood.
Thank you. We'll now take any public comments related to the agenda item number 1, which is the welcome.
There are no public comment items for this agenda item.
Okay. Dr. Estes shared earlier our meeting agenda, which includes commission updates from the executive director, followed by updates from the commission committees. Before we transition to those agenda items, we will first take any public comment on items not on the agenda.
We have one in-person public comment for this item. Will Abigail Freshley please step up to the podium? You can begin your public comment when you're ready.
Can you hear me okay? Awesome. I'm a little tall. So. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for coming to Southern California. My name is Abigail Freshley. I am manager of the Emergency Resilience Project at Public Health Advocates. And I'm also here representing the California Racial Equity Coalition. In a recent, I think you're going to get to this a little bit later, but in a recent report from the Framework Committee, I noticed that you all put forward some great items for exploration and some goals set forward for the future, including better defining what is a framework, exploring some of your best practices, tools, methodologies, guidance on implementation and measuring impact, and also centering racial equity in your work. This is super exciting and great, and I want to lift up that the coalition has produced a report, which should be on the dais available in front of you, that includes 3 documents. One is the Proposition 209 explainer, which has undergone legal review and approval by the Equal Justice Society, a budget equity tool brief, and a racial equity framework brief. I think that the materials included within that report will greatly help in answering some of the questions that you laid forward in your committee report. And I would be more than happy to further discuss the contents of that report with you at a later date. The coalition, myself and other members of the coalition are here to support you. And these materials were developed in partnership with experts, several of whom have presented before this commission on panels and boards. There's really great stuff there, defining factors for success in racial equity, defining key racial equity terms, and really laying out the components of what we believe to be a successful racial equity framework. So please don't hesitate to reach out. I have cards. I'd love to talk to you later. And thank you again so much for being here.
Thank you. Our next public comment item is Mimi Velasquez. You may begin whenever you're ready.
Thank you, everyone, for being with us in the Inland Empire and for the opportunity to speak on something that's not in the agenda. As a resident of Riverside, and we don't have that many opportunities to speak directly to bodies that touch upon racial and inequities that affect us on a daily basis. So that is my perspective as a public health professional focusing on health equity. That's my other hat, but my main hat for today is a resident of the Inland Empire. One of the biggest issues that I am experiencing, and many others like me, is that the Inland Empire was a region that was affected greatly by the housing crisis in 2008. And because of predatory lending policies that are specifically targeted poor people of color, many people lost their homes. And now we're in a new crisis where the city of Riverside, or the average home price here, is over $660,000. When my mother and my family moved into this region, they were able to afford a home for less than $100,000. During the bubble pop of 2008, during that housing crisis, many people were able to afford a home within $100,000 and $300,000. Now it is $660,000. Riverside is over 66% Latino. We are a commuter city. Many folks here drive all the way to LA and Orange County to make a livable wage. There are not enough businesses and ways for us to work here to make a livable wage. A livable wage is about $85,000. With the warehouse boom that's happening between Amazon and other organizations affecting our air quality, most workers don't get close to that. So now we're in a crisis where our communities are not able to afford a home. I can't. And I want to work and live and play here, to the mayor's point. But we don't have that ability because the California Dream for All program doesn't allow us to tap into it because there's a clause that says first generation only. And so that means that that's a fantastic group of people that can access that voucher, but folks like me can't. And so this is an opportunity to talk about redlining and how that's still affecting someone like me, a first-gen woman who comes from poverty that has a fantastic education but still can't afford a home in her own region. So now everyone's moving to the higher desert, and what's that doing? There's not enough infrastructure in the higher desert to even support us. And so I asked this commission to think about housing implications for people of color in this region who are mostly blue-collar working class. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comment for this item.
All right, thank you. We'll now transition to agenda item number 3, which is the approval of the March 21st, 2024 meeting minutes. Before we call a motion, we'll first take any public comment related to this agenda item, which is the approval again of the March 21st, 2024 meeting minutes.
Commissioner, I apologize. We just received one public comment for item number 2. Can we go ahead?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. The person for public comment item for number 2 is Samantha Guerrero. Samantha Guerrero, can you raise your hand on Zoom so that we can locate you? Samantha, you can speak when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Samantha, policy intern with the for Humane Immigrant, a nonprofit advocate committed to working on behalf of our immigrant community. As in the past, our appreciation of mission and its mission overall, and we would like to urge top of mind our and particularly bring in the successes as well as
we're unable to hear you clearly. There's a couple options. One, you may consider posting it or in the chat window.
Okay.
Or if you might want to turn off your mic and then turn it back on and see if that might clear it up.
Okay. Is that better?
It is right now, yes.
Okay. Okay, let me know if there's any issues.
We restarted your time, so you're free to use your 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Samantha Guerrero. I'm a policy intern with the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights, a nonprofit advocacy organization committed to working on behalf of the interests of our immigrant community. As in the past, I'd like to reiterate our appreciation for the hard work of this commission and its mission overall. And we would like to urge you all to keep top of mind our immigrant community, and particularly for laboring in that we're experiencing right now, as well as those who lack healthcare, while also committing to the fight for comprehensive. Again, thank you for this, and encourage you to keep working on behalf of the marginalized in our state. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Additionally, there are no public comment for item number 3.
And I also just want to reiterate that there's opportunity to submit written comment again. So we got most of that, but not all of it. So before we call for a motion, we'll take any public comment related going back to where we were, the approval of the March 21st, 2024 meeting minutes.
There are no public comments for this item.
Are there any comments, questions, or discussion from the commission? Commissioner Kim?
The minutes are very well put together and very exhaustive. I just wanted to note on page 3 a comment that is attributed to me in the middle of the page. I was noting the RIPA board, RIPA, the Racial and Identity Profiling Act board, not the Ripple board. So I just wanted to note that change.
What does the acronym stand for again?
Racial and Identity Profiling Act board. RIPA. Ripple is one of my favorite Grateful Dead songs, but not what I was referencing.
Noted, and we'll make that change in the minutes prior to posting.
Other commissioners? Commissioner Wright? No?
Motion to approve with the change.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded, moved by Commissioner Wright, seconded by Commissioner Matthews. Augustine, can you please take a roll call vote?
Commissioner Virginia Hedrick,
Aye.
Commissioner John Kim,
Aye.
Commissioner Gabriel Maldonado,
Aye.
Commissioner Traco Matthews,
Aye.
Commissioner Jolie Onodera,
Aye.
Commissioner Dr. Manuel Pastor,
Aye.
Commissioner Yolanda Richardson,
Aye.
Commissioner Angelica Salas,
Aye.
Commissioner Candace Bowles,
Aye.
Commissioner Dr. Luke Wood,
Aye.
Commissioner Symbol Wright.
Aye.
Thank you. This item passes unanimous.
All right, thank you. The motion has passed. We'll now move on to agenda item number 4, which is the Executive Director's report from Dr. Estes.
Thank you, Commissioner Wood. Just a few highlights from the work of the staff over the last several months. We're excited to announce a couple of staff members joining us. We have Raynell Davis, who is serving as a special assistant to the executive director, helping to develop standard operating procedures for our commission as well as other administrative functions. We have also welcomed Camille Randolph as a program analyst. Camille will provide administrative support to convene and facilitate commission meetings, conduct research in support of the development of the framework and technical assistance delivery, as well as coordinate communication efforts. We anticipate hiring additional FTEs in the coming weeks, including a senior program analyst and a commission operations manager. In terms of programmatic updates, the following committees have met and will provide brief reports after this agenda item. Committee reports have been made available online with the exception of the Data Committee, which met this morning. The Budget Equity Committee met May 9th in Los Angeles. The Framework Development Committee met on June 14th. The Fundraising Committee met on June 28th, and the Data Committee, of course, met this morning on July 17th. We anticipate the Community Engagement and the Implementation and Technical Assistance Committees to be convened within the next few months. Coinciding many of our public meetings, we have done community meet and greets in partnership with community organizations in the spaces and places that we've been welcomed into, which includes Lamont, California in March, South Central Los Angeles in May, and then yesterday at True Evolution in Riverside. Commission staff continue to plan these events alongside community partners and will look to host more throughout the state in the coming months. We are currently exploring opportunities to host events in Sonoma County/Wine Country in partnership with Sonoma County and the United Way Wine Country, Fresno in partnership with the California Commission on the State of Haiti and the Commission on Asian Pacific Islander Affairs, and in Yuba City in partnership with the Commission on Asian Pacific Islander Affairs. That brings me to the timeline of the commission, which is on the screen for you all. The 2024 Budget Act actually extended the commission deadline for the following items. The racial equity framework was previously due in our authorizing legislation on April 1st, no later than April 1st, 2025. That deadline has been extended to December 1st, 2025. Also, subsequently, annual reports, our first annual report will be then due the December that year after. So beginning in 2026, we will have annual reports thereafter. Upcoming commission meetings are included on this timeline. We are looking at a September 18th meeting in the Bay Area. It actually happens to coincide with the Salesforce, the large Salesforce meeting that they have there that takes over San Francisco, and I see Mayor Dawson shaking their head. It's a huge logistical challenge, but we will definitely overcome that challenge in identifying space to host our commission meeting. And then December 19th in Sacramento. We are starting to map our 2025 meeting dates and have proposed the following dates or months and locations. March 2025, Salton Sea or Imperial County. June 2025, Monterey or Salinas. September 2025, Klamath, Reading, Eureka or Weed. and December 2025 back in Sacramento, where we would actually have the final racial equity framework. In terms of the asset analysis, we've been talking about this item several times over the last few months in our meetings, and just a little bit of grounding. The asset analysis is really an opportunity for the commission to better understand the racial equity work that is happening across the state within government agencies and commissions. And we really want to have that understanding of what folks are already doing, so that in the design of a racial equity framework, we are supportive of existing work and helping to better understand how we can help agencies and departments go where they want to go in terms of advancing racial equity. We are currently working with the Possibility Lab at UC Berkeley and the State of Equity at the Public Health Institute to design survey and key informant interview questions. The goal of the survey and the key informant interview questions is to be complementary to each other and to build upon each other. The idea is that the survey will gather a large sample across state government, whereas interviews will be a little bit more in-depth around successes, promising practices, tools, and lessons learned around advancing racial equity in the state of California. We anticipate the administration as well as the Framework Development Committee to review the survey and key informant interview questions in the coming weeks. The categories that we are looking to uplift in these two products are really, what is the equity infrastructure that agencies and departments may have? How are they advancing budget equity, and how are they thinking of it through the budget processes that we have at the state? Community and stakeholder engagement, data research and quality improvement strategies, planning and programmatic initiatives, and opportunities and lessons learned. We are also working very closely with the administration on developing a dissemination strategy for that survey to make sure that we are covering a wide swath of government that is working on racial equity. Up next is actually an opportunity that Commissioner Pastor has provided to the Racial Equity Commission around working with students at USC around race. Commissioner Pastor is going to be teaching a course this fall on race, and graduate students enrolled in this course will be given an option to conduct research for the commission or to inform the commission, and working directly with myself as well as Commissioner Pastor as their professor. Staff has compiled a high-level database of racial equity initiatives at the state and local level using the GARE network, as well as building upon other resources that have been developed prior to ours. And, really the time and the space, and that the requests that we have here for the commissioners are, and take some space for that, is to see if there are any specific items or topics that you all would like to provide as an option for these graduate students to research this fall. They may research examples, conduct key informant interviews, and just further research that may inform commission deliberations. The graduate students will have an opportunity to present their work later in this year, and in the form of a presentation, a panel discussion, or a memo to staff. And again, this is all to help inform commission deliberations. With that, I'm going to pause and see if Commissioner Pastor has anything that he would like to add to this conversation, but then we can transition to any discussion that commissioners may have on topics.
I often say this is why God invented graduate students. So I will be teaching a course on race and racism, and I think it's a graduate level course. There'll be about 14 students, most from sociology, some from public policy, political science. And that kind of course often has a lot of people focused on theory. And I thought it would be very useful for the class to do something involved with practice, which is what would it be like to implement an anti-racist agenda, thinking about the realm of work of the commission. So I think it's going to be useful for the class. I think it could be very useful for the commission. I also perhaps Dr. Justice can comment on this, we're very aware that this isn't official work, that it's not being commissioned by the state, that it's graduate students taking on a project and providing some information which you may use or reject. We need to think very carefully about that separation. But I think it will be enormously beneficial for these students, certainly for the professor, because it'll lead up some class time. But also, I think it really could inform the commission and assist the staff with some work that they may not be able to do. Topics we've thought about are evaluating racial equity work across the country, seeing what other jurisdictions are doing, but I think we'd like to open it up to see if there are topics of interest to the commissioners. Dr. Estes, did I get that right?
You absolutely did. So I'll turn it over to Commissioner Wood for any initial comments, but also to facilitate any dialogue here.
Yeah, first of all, I think it's an incredibly generous offer, and so we're going to take you up on it. I certainly have thoughts, but I want to allow other folks to go first. So are there recommendations for research topics, comments, or questions from the Commission on graduate student research topics? Commissioner Salas?
I think one topic that I would like us to focus on, and we've heard it over the course of some of our community engagements, is on focused attention to our elders and how they're faring economically, how really injecting really a lens of equity what the situation is for them right now, especially given that some are living on fixed income and therefore their housing situation is very precarious. And of course, in particular, also looking at race, ethnicity, and immigration status.
That's wonderful. Commissioner Maldonado?
Yeah, it would be interesting to know the differences in experiences for those that live in rural, suburban, and urban regions throughout the state, and where there are overlapping priorities and inequity issues, but also where are the outliers that are unique to those that are in those types of regions.
All right. Commissioner Bowles?
I would like to study areas where there is equity, where there's access to housing, education, health, equity. If that exists in the world, I would like to explore all of it and know what are the policies and practices that create an environment where equity actually lives.
Commissioner Wright?
Excuse me, work equity. I would like to make sure that that's looked into also. Thank you.
Commissioner Hedrick, and then we'll go to Commissioner Kim.
Race and its intersection with political status, that of both members of federally recognized tribes, documented, undocumented, just the intersections of race and political status.
Commissioner Kim?
Starting to feel bad for these grad students. Something very tactical for us, since community engagement is really a pillar of what this commission is about. We get such great public comments. It is hard to track, are there larger themes for us to pull from it? So a thematic analysis of our public comments, because I have handwritten notes, but it's hard to know what are things that come up the most. So that kind of thematic analysis would be helpful.
Commissioner Richardson?
We just ask across the board in whatever they do, and I know it's going to be fantastic, is some component of best practices around change management. So we're focused on not just what we need to do, but how to do it across geographic areas and population, age groups, and some of the other demographics that have been mentioned today.
I'm reticent because I feel terrible for the grad students as well. But thinking of our earlier meeting today about data and potential investment, I'd love to see what investment looks like geographically around the state. maybe almost like per head or per, by population, and how that correlates to equity outcomes. It could be across sectors, or you could pick a couple. But I'd like to see what that looks like in terms of the state's investment. And you know what? Let's narrow it down. Investment in community or CBOs. So to the extent that the state finds a way to invest in CBOs, I want to see how that translates to different outcomes for people around the state. Thanks.
And I would just add, would love to see interviews or conversations with frontline workers across different state agencies to think about what are the policies and practices that they would recommend being changed to alleviate inequities. Oftentimes we have those kinds of conversations with folks who are in higher level leadership roles, but they're not necessarily on the ground and don't understand how decisions that they make may produce unintended consequences. Commissioner O'Dara.
Thanks so much. I know, Dr. Pastore, you had mentioned that you're going to be evaluating things across the country, but maybe just to clarify, I know a lot of our local communities are doing a lot of good work, and so we just want to make sure that we're uplifting those great examples for us to possibly bring to scale. Thank you.
So I'll just add a few things. First, I don't feel sorry for the graduate students because no professor is supposed to feel sorry. But also, you're doing exactly what we wanted. We will take this list of topics to students and look for intersections of their interest in these topics. And one of the early classes, Dr. Estes has agreed to come and visit and sketch out the work of the commission, and again, look for the intersections. So this was a big brainstorming. We won't obviously be able to answer all those questions, but we'll see where there's a useful intersection.
Excellent. All right.
And I'm happy to continue my report, and then I guess we'll go to public comment in just a moment. Our final item, which is actually an action item from my report, is a logo and branding for the Racial Equity Commission. Commission staff established an interagency agreement with the Department of General Services, Office of State Publishing, to design a logo for the commission, as well as to help facilitate the design of other templates to support the branding of the commission's work, including a newsletter template, PowerPoint template, and templates for our framework and reports. On the screen, as well as within your materials, there are two logo options for the commission to consider. We have version A and version B. There is some context behind the design of the logos, and I'll just read here. And in these concepts, commission is really trying to be emphasizing around the idea of mission and highlighting that this work is a journey and that it's ongoing. The multicolored bars highlight an aspect of forward-moving progress. The colors themselves represent diversity, collaboration. For version A, as seamless gradients. For version B, teasing out some deeper colors that connect into colors that have some meanings in Black and Indigenous communities and other communities of color. And there are two different ways of articulating California, whether it be just the word California, state of California, as well as the image of the state itself in the silhouette. And so at this point, I'd like to turn it over to the commission for any conversation around the two options that have been presented. We'd love to be able to walk out with agreement on one with or without changes to it so that we can work with our contractor to address those.
All right, so by now everyone's had a chance to review and reflect on the two logos. So are there comments or questions from commissioners? And feel free to just jump in on this one. Commissioner Wright?
Yes. Version B, Vision B is something that I think is something we should move forward with. It has statehood in there, showing that the commission is part of the state of California. We have a lot of other private sector, private businesses that may say California something. California Tow Truck Company, or so on and so forth. But this, let's make sure that we are part of the state of California and recognizing the state of California.
All right. Commissioner Salas, you're starting to reach for it.
Yeah. Version B, also committed. I actually like the idea of really digging deeper into our, shared identities, as well as our kind of really focused on our indigenous, our racial identities, gender identities. So version B really, to me, reflects that.
Well, it's just completely aesthetic, but I kind of like the teal state on the side, but I'm willing to sacrifice that minor preference for the reasons that Simboa and Commissioner Salas have both mentioned. So version B for me as well.
So we've had several commissioners indicate version B. Does anyone want to speak for version A or elements? Okay. Well, this is an action item. The commission must vote upon this, but before we do that motion, we must first take any public comment related to the executive director's report. Augustine, is there any public comment?
Yes, we have one virtual public comment and two in-person public comments. We will first begin with in-person public comments. Each speaker will have a maximum of 2 minutes to make their remarks. Speakers requiring or using translation services are allotted 4 minutes to facilitate full participation. If you're online, you'll see a timer pop up on your screen. Please monitor that and wrap up your remarks accordingly. Our first in-person public comment is Mayor Karina Quintanilla.
My comment wasn't actually regarding the logo. It may have gotten put somewhere else. Essentially, just to add 10 seconds to what I said earlier, is that okay? I don't want to overstep. Not permissive?
We're
okay,
fine. We're
perfect.
fine with
I
that.
just want to
Please.
recognize. What I wanted to follow up and be sure to present here in terms of the equity that's necessary is on October 17th and 18th, UCR will have a symposium on the Salton Sea. And this is an excellent opportunity to look at the equity impacts given the population of the area. And going back to the research the graduate students do, they presented things such as the meteorology of dust storms. If we can predict those patterns, we can do better to inform people of how to maximize that impact. So just wanted to be sure to present those crucial topics. And again, support the grad students. They need to be publicized. They need to be published. They've got a lot of student debt, so let's support them. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. We have two more in-person public comments for this item. Will Julia Kaplan and Alejandra please line up? Julia, you'll go first. After Julia concludes, Alejandra, you can begin.
Great. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Julia Kaplan with State of Equity, and I love a good brainstorm, and I also have found that our work has been greatly advanced by working with graduate students. So I just wanted to add an idea to the mix that the state of California has had really a proliferation of racial equity positions and equity leadership roles and jurisdictions across the state over the last few years. And we've also seen just in the last year or so quite a lot of those people leave their positions. I think it would be really useful to have a way to gather information from both the people in those roles, but also people who were formerly in those roles about what they've learned, what they've been able to do, and barriers that they've faced. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to clarify, you can provide comment related to the logo, but also to anything related to the executive director's report. So the broader comments are absolutely appropriate. So thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Alejandra Ponce de Leon, Senior Manager with the Political Voice team at Catalyst California, and also member of the California Racial Equity Coalition. So I just want to appreciate just hearing the report from Dr. Estes in terms of the timeline, and especially hearing the extension of the timeline to get the racial equity framework developed. And so related to the timeline, just wanted to uplift two things. So one, at least hearing, the process of conducting this asset landscape analysis is going to be really helpful. And just wondering, what does community engagement look like in terms of the process that you'll be taking to develop the framework to get input from the communities that are most impacted by systemic racism? What are the opportunities in addition to public hearings? And I'm really appreciative of Commissioner Kim's suggestion of utilizing grad students to analyze the feedback that you're receiving either in person or written public comment. But what are the other spaces, to really get community input directly to help inform and shape the framework as well, in addition to the asset landscape analysis. And so that's just something that I wanted to uplift. And I know that the Community Engagement Committee is still to be meeting soon, right? But just wanted to uplift that to start thinking about what does that process look like. And I think for us in the coalition, our hope is that this commission also models what does community engagement look like for the state. And to be able to do that and put it into practice is really, really important, not only to inform the racial equity framework, but to develop those best practices and show this is how it's done. And then second, in terms of now with the extended timeline, we would really love to see more of benchmarks, what's happening month to month or quarter by quarter. Where is the commission going with their work? Because it helps the public understand what is the roadmap that you're laying out and what are the different steps that you're taking, because it also allows us to be as a resource and to be as informative and to help in that journey with all of you. And so really wanting to ask, to have that, updated version. I know there was a timeline earlier when the first meeting started. Now that there's a change in the timeline and the deadline, it really helps to see just understanding what is the process that you'll all be undergoing as well. So those are the two things that I wanted to uplift in relation to your report. Thank you.
Thank you. We received one more in-person submission for this item. Michael Jimenez, you may step up to the podium.
Thank you. Sorry for the late public comment. Commissioners, good afternoon. My name is Michael Jimenez. I work at the California Strategic Growth Council. I just want to appreciate the report from Dr. Estes and the updates. I want to reflect on the survey you mentioned that's being designed. Just wanted to let you know and offer support for the more interagency coordination around that. My organization is an interagency organization and is really set up well to help facilitate sharing of awareness and information across all of state government, particularly through the Interagency Health and All Policies Task Force, but also amplifying a lot of other working groups, task forces, initiatives that have been set up in the last couple of years. Has really been a proliferation of greater coordination around racial equity within California state government. So really making sure that some of those groups are aware of this opportunity to weigh in, and going through my organization to help support that is definitely an offer on the table. So just wanted to put that out there. Thanks, Augustine.
Thank you. For virtual public comment, when you hear your name, please raise your hand in Zoom. You can do this by clicking Raise Hand under the Participants menu, which you can find at the bottom of your screen on the Zoom platform, or by pressing *9 if you are joining us by phone. And one of our team's members will unmute you. For virtual public comment, will Cynthia Gomez please raise your hand? Thank you, Cynthia. You may begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon. Can you all hear me well?
Yes, loud and clear.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Cynthia Gomez. I'm the Deputy Director of Policy and Advocacy with the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights. Chidla is also a member of the California Racial Equity Coalition. Thank you so much for the work that you all have been doing. I have 2 points that I want to make. First, I'd like to thank you all for the updated timeline. As stated before by one of the folks in person, this timeline is incredibly important, and having the transparency of knowing when deadlines are happening is really great. I really want to thank the previous collaboration that we've had working together as community members, advocates for communities, and to all the commissioners who are doing this important work and really us a future continued collaboration on this in light of the new timeline. The other aspect that I wanted to on was graduate research. As someone that has some background in works policy, data is an incredible component of positive legislation. I also want to emphasize the points that 2 commissioners.
Excuse me, Ms. Gomez, you are.
Sorry, I can't hear what you all are saying.
If you can try again, but maybe talk a little bit slower, it might help with some of it coming through.
It sounds good. Do you need me to restart?
I don't think that we need you to restart, but starting right here would be good. And you sound much clearer just right now when you said that.
Sounds good. Will do. Thank you. The second point that I want to reiterate on the data aspect, I want to echo the importance of 2 things that commissioners have pointed out. The geographical aspect. California is a large state with a lot of diversity, including geographical diversity. So emphasizing the needs of folks in underserved communities, in particular the Central Valley and the Inland Empire. And the other aspect that I wanted to mention was the importance of data and research on our seniors. We know that our population is aging rapidly and their needs are diverse and different to the needs of the younger population. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That concludes public comment for this item. I will hand it back to you, Chair Wood.
Are there any further comments or questions from this discussion from the commissioners before we move to vote? And that's going to also be on the executive director's report. Well, I actually have one. So a comment and a encouragement. One comment is just that just to commend our executive director. It's not easy beginning a commission from the ground up and all the work that's been done with you and the staff, and just want to thank you for the incredible work that you're doing on behalf of the state of California and those who've been disaffected and downtrodden by this state. The second is an encouragement. I know the commission staff are mapping out locations for the 2025 meetings, and September is looking at the far north. As being a person who is from the far north, I saw that Weed, California is on there, and Weed, Mount Shasta, Wairika, Dunsmuir, McLeod are all a very unique set of environments. And so I would encourage out of those options that are listed there to, if it's possible to locate it in Weed, that would be desired.
And I'll just reflect that there are different ways to touch many of the geographical regions, acknowledging that there are differences. We can do a committee meeting in one place. We can do a commission meeting in another place. We can do a series of listening sessions and hearings that may not necessarily be tied to one community, but we are committed to meeting community where they are. And it doesn't necessarily have to go alongside the timeline that we have laid out here. It's just specific to commission meetings, but happy to continue to explore what that looks like in moving staff throughout the state to engage with community on the local level.
All right, Commissioner Kim?
Just a question and maybe a request on the survey and interview instruments that are being, I think, finalized now. Wondering if there's an opportunity for it to be presented either to the commission or to a committee for review. Also, I would assume, but just want to confirm, that the interviews will come after the survey, right? So the survey may point to particular items that we might want to dig into more in the interviews. So just want to clarify sequence.
So one, the Framework Development Committee, which is made up of Commissioner Richardson and Commissioner Pastor, will review the survey at this point. You know, as much as we got the extension, like I still feel like we're running out of time. So there was a hope that we would be positioned to be able to share a little bit more with the full body. But I'm going to ask that you trust your Framework Development Committee in that. Secondly, with the timing, there's an opportunity for a twofold strategy. One, the survey going out, but there have also been a host of practitioners that have gone through the Capital Collaborative on Race and Equity training already that we know of. And so there may be folks that are identified or things to dig into coming out of the survey, but we already kind of know a group of folks that are already have been through some of the trainings. They've been implementing work actively. And so I think there's an opportunity, and this is what we're working on with Possibility Lab, State of Equity, as well as with the administration, is to best identify how do we reach as many folks as we can that can provide this information, and even exploring, are there ways where multiple people can collaborate in completing the survey collectively? I don't know if we want to do that for key informant interviews, because there are often things that we want to tease out in key informant interviews that might be different in experiences between one staff person versus another, and wanting to maintain the integrity of their experience within that interview. So there could be potential there, but we are definitely keeping in mind what could come out of the survey that could inform something around the interview.
All right, if there's no other comments, we can move back to the conversation on the logo. It seems that folks were gravitating towards version number 2. Do I have a motion from our commissioners?
Do we need a motion on the executive report first, or is that combined?
No.
Okay. Yeah. I'll make a motion that we accept version B of the State of California Racial Equity Commission.
Moved by Commissioner Matthews.
I second.
Second by Commissioner Richardson. Augustine, will you facilitate? Yeah, thanks.
Commissioner Virginia Hedrick.
Aye.
Commissioner John Kim.
Aye.
Commissioner Gabriel Maldonado.
Aye.
Commissioner Traco Matthews.
Aye.
Commissioner Jolie Onodera.
Aye.
Commissioner Dr. Manuel Pastor.
Aye.
Commissioner Yolanda Richardson.
Aye.
Commissioner Angelica Salas.
Aye.
Commissioner Candice Bowles.
Aye.
Commissioner Dr. Luke Wood.
Aye.
Commissioner Simboa Wright.
Aye.
Thank you. All commissioners voted in favor of option B.
All right, thank you. So at this time, we're going to take a 15-minute recess. We're going to take, right now it's, say, 2:40, so we'll come back at 2:50, let's say 2:57.
Yeah.
I was like, that's what I was trying to get you. Like, you can just say, let's have a vote. Motion to vote on it. No.
Gotcha, okay.
All right. Bringing the commission back to order. We're now going to move on to agenda item number 5, which is committee reports. Each committee will share an update, including any discussion items or action items needed from the commission. Reports are posted at Racial Equity Commission website at racialequity.opr.ca.gov/meetings. As part of the meeting materials link under the section titled July 17, 2024, California Racial Equity Commission. So we're going to first begin with the data committee lead. Are there, yes. All right, let's go to Commissioner Maldonado.
Okay. So the Budget Equity Committee met on May 9th. It was an amazing meeting, but not only because it was our first meeting, because it was an amazingly spirited meeting. I was joined by Commissioner Bowles, Commissioner Kim, and Commissioner Onodera. We also had a panel discussion from Los Angeles County's DEI Division, City of San Diego's DEI Division, the Green Lining Institute, and Inner City Struggle. A couple of the recap notes I just kind of summarized is, one is that we want to make it clear that the relationship between the community and the state in terms of budget planning should be consistent. It shouldn't be something that just happens once a year or just is advisory, but that is integrated throughout the budget planning and implementation process. We talked about dispelling and confronting the false narratives around equity, and that it often means to some people that we're taking from one and giving to another, which often really comes up when we're talking about budget and allocation. I really love that we have our data committee in partnership, because we did highlight that data is essential, and that the budget equity policies, funding allocations, and the baseline for actions and goals outlined should be informed from data. We do recognize that there needs to be a better understanding of the agencies and departments and how they lead their own individual budget planning and implementation process, and then how that works with the larger state framework with the Department of Finance and other administering agencies. And I think that we really want to be mindful that not only within the state of California, but that California is also dealing with federal and local regulations as it relates to implementation on the ground. So being mindful of intersecting policies and requirements as we're developing our framework. And then kind of underscoring, my final point is underscoring something that was brought up many times by the public, was that the budget equity process should be transparent from beginning to end, from development, implementation, and evaluation. And so that community needs to be embedded in all three aspects of budget planning. I don't know if there's anything else. Was that a good summary, Executive Director? Okay, thank you. That's it. Back to you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We will now go to the Fundraising Committee. Commissioners Maldonado and Salas.
Okay, so our Fundraising Committee met on June 28th. Commissioner Maldonado, myself, as well as our Executive Director, Estes, were present. So we discussed two key priorities for the committee, and this also goes to a point that was made earlier, which was that we really want to ensure that our fundraising facilitates and ensures active and scaled community engagement. We wanted to generate enthusiasm from philanthropy to invest in the development of the framework, and then support the organizations that are actually advancing or advocating for racial equity and who have been key towards advancing this work. We believe that foundations have a real opportunity to support the success of the commission and the framework. We also want to support the staff and the staff needs that can, in terms of any of the resources necessary to advance and accelerate the work. And so just knowing the cost of implementation is going to be key to sustainability. We discussed key foundations and corporations and others who are interested in advancing racial equity and justice and possible engagement with those foundations. We explored that strategy to engage with corporations and corporate social responsibility arms on funding. So in terms of next steps, the committee will be connecting with staff and key foundation and corporate responsibility leaders to inform them of our work. The staff will also draft a strategy for outreach and engagement of foundations and corporate responsibility leaders. We will also engage in making sure that what we do is vetted, and there'll be a follow-up with legal counsel on that piece. And then I think engaging with philanthropy and corporate social responsibility entities can really ensure our community is able to actively engage and be informed of the Commission's charge. And we also see philanthropy as a critical partner and a broader buy-in to advance our narrative change and the success of the state's efforts to advance racial equity and address structural racism. We also discussed, I would just end by the governor's office has done a lot of work in order to create those partnerships in philanthropy, and certainly those same ideas should be advanced in supporting the work of the Racial Equity Commission. That is it.
Are there any questions for this committee? Okay, if not, let's move on to the Data Committee, which is become newly chaired by Commissioner Pastor with enthusiasm earlier today.
I think enthusiasm might be an exaggeration, but I did agree to chair it. It's our first meeting today. It was actually a really good meeting because we had a panel discussion with representatives from Catalyst, California, the USC Equity Research Institute, UCLA Center for Health Policy Research, who were also joined by Jason Lawley, Chief Data Office of Data and Innovation. There was a lot of emphasis on the need to disaggregate data, a lot of emphasis on the question of community engagement in generating data. There was a lot of focus on the fact that smaller communities, sometimes for statistical reliability, are not portrayed, but that that can mask some very important issues with regard to diversity within, in particular, the Asian Pacific Islander community, indigenous communities in California. The other things which I think came out that will be work for the staff are to think about indicators that track racial equity, but focus not just on population outcomes, but on process outcomes, participation, design, recognition of structural racism, and policy outcomes, that is, intermediate policy impacts, in part because for the state to actually have an emphasis on population outcomes, it needs to think about policy and process. One other thing which I think came up and has come up generally here is the need to do geographic disaggregation and to understand data in different communities around the state. So a very good start. I suspect the only error that was made was the election of me as the lead, but aside from that, great success.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions for this committee? Okay, let's go to the Framework Development Committee by Commissioners Pastor and Richardson.
I had the distinguished honor of meeting with Dr. Pastor and talking about our Framework Development Committee on June the 14th. It was a great conversation and outlined just some considerations for the framework development and appreciate the extension of time that we have to do that. Certainly around some things with regard to thinking about what's actionable versus conceptual, especially for large systems that will be having to implement the framework. And I think we talked a little bit today about some opportunities for change management and some best practices. We also talked about some definitions around disparities and what we mean by that, and making sure that we identify what populations would be targeted by the framework. And so appreciate also leveraging some of the things that we heard today and some of the work that has already been done around that. We also explored the opportunity for us and the commission at large to understand what are some of those key drivers of disparity. So I think that'll help and lend itself to us defining what we mean by that. And then continuing to look forward to having some intersectionality with the other committees, especially around data, to inform the work and the actual development of the framework. That's our report.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the committee? Okay, so my understanding is the Budget Equity Committee has proposed amendments to the Commission's bylaws and would like to have them talk that through with us.
Do we have a copy of those? I didn't see them in the packet. Okay.
It should be in your packet.
Okay.
However, there is, under Article 8, Section 2, Letter C, Budget Equity Committee, this was an amendment that was brought to the committee by Commissioner Kim around adding some additional language to the charge of the committee. The content in the bylaws approved on March 21st reads as, Budget Equity Committee will develop recommendations, including best practices and strategies for the analysis of how budget allocations benefit or burden communities of color. Commissioner Kim's proposed amendment to the bylaws adds on to that sentence, adding and strategies to advance budget equity and address structural racism in budgeting. And the rationale for the change was to bring the charge of the committee closer to Executive Order 1622, which is what established the commission. I do want to allow Commissioner Kim, if there's any additional context you would like to provide on this proposed amendment for the commission's consideration.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Estes. So yeah, the language of the charter before, the worry was whether or not that language would unintentionally bracket the committee's work to just looking at analysis around budget and not allow the committee to also propose proactive recommendations. And again, it does pull language or is aligned language to the original executive order, which establishes commission. So we felt it was good alignment on previously proposed and publicly disseminated language and gives more breadth and allowances for the committee to do its work.
Are there questions from the commissioners?
No, just it seems to align with the language for all of the other committees. And so I don't know why we would want to singularly restrict the budget committee to not including strategies. Everybody else is talking about strategies as well. So I think it makes absolute sense.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay. All right. So these proposed amendments and action, no, go ahead, Commissioner Ronald.
I was just going to say it did have the full support of the whole committee. We were all enthusiastic about this change, not just Commissioner Kemp. So we stand behind our commissioner in his recommendation.
Excellent. So before we can have things voted for approval, we do need to call a motion for each of the action items. And before we can do that, we need to go to take public comment on this agenda item on the committee reports.
Before we jump into public comment, I do want to question for clarification from our legal counsel. Given that this came from a committee and the committee has voted on bringing it forward to the body, do you need an actual motion and a second to move this forward for vote? Or what's the procedure that you need?
Yes, the entire commission should adopt a change to the bylaws.
With a motion, or is the amendment itself and the proposed amendment coming out of committee and being voted out of committee enough of a motion?
I think it's an additional motion here would just be the belt and suspenders approach.
Thank you.
Okay. So public comment, yeah.
We will have in-person public comment first, followed by virtual public comments. We have no virtual public comments on this item and 2 in person. Each speaker will have a maximum of 2 minutes to make their remarks. Speakers requiring or using translation services are allotted 4 minutes to facilitate full participation. If you're online, you'll see a timer pop up on your screen. Please monitor that and wrap up your remarks accordingly. For in person, when you hear your name, please line up by the podium in the order your name was called. I will then call on you individually to the podium to speak. We have received public comment cards from the following individuals. Will Vince Lels and Danielle Kitchenstein line up, please?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Vince Leus. I'm an Associate Program Manager with Prevention Institute. And since we're in Riverside, I'll also mention an alumni of UC Riverside. So excited to be back where I was trained as a young organizer and as a young student of ethnic studies. I wanted to respond to the comments, the report back from the Framework Committee. Really happy to see that the committee is thinking about the question of what are the key drivers of disparities here in California. And I think a specific focus on looking at or exploring how specific historical racist policies like redlining, how these policies have created the inequitable blueprint for the disparities we see today in health, housing, and education, I think would go a long way in really articulating the urgency for a racial equity framework. I think across the state and across the country, we're seeing really strong challenges to the very work that this commission is doing. And I think that there will be a need for a strong assertion of why a racial equity framework is even needed in the first place. I don't think everyone in the public sees it the way that we do here, and it'll be important to make that case. And so I think maybe if I can add to the list of research topics for the USC graduate students, maybe an exploration into connecting how historical policies have created the specific health and socioeconomic disparities we see today. And I think you don't have to go far in terms of your starting point. The work of the Reparations Task Force and the Reparations Task Force's report, which was released just last July, provides a really good starting point to thinking about how historical policies have created the racial disparities we see today. Thank you.
We received one virtual public comment for this item. After this in person, we'll move over to virtual public comment.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Hi, Commissioners. Very excited to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Dr. Danielle Kilchenstein. I am with Inland SoCal United Way. We are very excited and enthusiastic about all of your work that you do, but especially the data committee, and very excited. So just wanted to reiterate our support to you and all of your efforts, especially as you're looking into the data. We know that it's incredibly difficult to, look at whether bias and discrimination is impacting outcomes if we don't have consistent and accurate data that we're able to access. We know that we have challenges in elevating and centering the stories behind the data, the individuals, and what that means if we don't have access to consistent and accessible data for all race and ethnicities. So just really excited for your efforts here. United Way is explicitly valuing and supporting equity, and so just really appreciate all of your continued efforts to make sure that the data is expanded in a way that we're able to continue to utilize locally to help elevate some of the needs to our elected officials, and again, advance some of that equity. Again, thank you so much for all of your efforts.
Thank you. For virtual public commenters, please note that in order to reduce feedback, we ask that you lower your computer volume before talking. Thank you for your understanding. When you hear your name, please raise your hand in Zoom. You can do this by clicking Raise Hand under the Participants menu, which you can find at the bottom of your screen on the Zoom platform, or by pressing *9 if you are joining by phone and a member of our team will unmute you. Our next public comment is from Elena Santamaria. Elena Santamaria, you may speak.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Elena Santamaria, and I'm Senior Policy Advisor at NextGen California. You're also a member of the California Racial Equity Coalition. First of all, I'd like to thank the work of the commissioners and the commission staff as relates to the information you've provided related to the subcommittees and the readouts. Secondly, the readouts of the subcommittees are necessary to begin and continue this work. However, the latest information provided seems to be a bit broad and lacks clarity and tangible next steps along. Though it's a difficult balance to strike, I hope the work of the commission will result in better outcomes for the state, departments, and agencies to meaningfully address the needs of communities that they serve. For example, this year's budget saw cuts to the most historically vulnerable communities first, and some coalition partners have expressed frustration with departments and agencies who are requesting feedback from community, but do little with no notice, provide shortened timelines for responses, and then make unilateral decisions that didn't include the feedback community provided in the first place, but then tout that they got community feedback. Ultimately, I hope the work of the commission and the framework will help provide guidance and influence to the departments and agencies to better serve the communities, and wonder how we get from where the commission is in its current work to the goals of reducing racial disparities. The coalition stands by ready to support the commission and its work, and we really appreciate all of your time. Thank you so much.
This public comment item for this agenda item. I'll hand it back to you, Chairwood.
Thank you. We'll now move back to the item on the bylaw change. Do I have a motion to approve? Move to approve by Commissioner Kim.
So I'd like to move that we amend Section 2C of the Commission's bylaws under standing committees, and specifically the Budget Equity Committee, to the language approved by the Budget Committee in its meeting on May 9th, and as proposed and presented as in the materials.
Okay, thank you. And it's second by Commissioner Maldonado?
Yes.
All right. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Virginia Hedrick.
Aye.
Commissioner John Kim.
Aye.
Commissioner Gabriel Maldonado.
Aye.
Commissioner Traco Matthews.
Aye.
Commissioner Jolion Odera.
Aye.
Commissioner Dr. Manuel Pastor.
Aye.
Commissioner Yolanda Richardson.
Aye.
Commissioner Angelica Salas.
Aye.
Commissioner Candace Bowles.
Aye.
Commissioner Dr. Luke Wood.
Aye.
Commissioner Simbol Wright.
Aye.
Thank you. The vote in favor of the bylaws amendment is unanimous.
Thank you. For the other committees that presented, are there any other action items that need to be brought forth to this body for approval? Okay, seeing that, we're going to move on to agenda item number 8, which is next steps for staff action. Our discussion today covered a range of updates and ideas to move the work of the Commission forward. We'd like to engage Commission staff on digging further into key areas that will support our future meetings and progress. From today's discussion, there's been a number of things that have already come out, especially in regards to research activities for graduate students that will keep them very busy. An action item that related to how we're going to be approaching our work as a commission, reports from different commissioners. And at this point, we'd like to see, are there any proposed next steps for staff action?
No action, but I did have a wondering that aligned with, I can't remember who shared the feedback. I'm wondering if there might be an opportunity to do a little more marketing of what we're doing. So somebody spoke to benchmarks, but especially with the extended deadlines. I know in my region, I get questions, and so, you know, maybe if after these meetings we had some bullet points, you know, 3 slides or something that we could just kind of share in our areas, it might help keep people's hearts bought in and connected to the work.
Just to respond to that, now that we have a bit more staff, there's an opportunity to potentially do more engagement and outreach through our distribution list with our newsletter and leveraging that more frequently. You know, there is a challenge around what kind of content we want to put out, and I want to be mindful that in a public meeting, we produce a set of meeting minutes, and that is a reflection of what the committee's or the commission's discussion is. And in putting out a few bullet points, we can probably do something that is very high level, but I hesitate on putting too much content within that because the minutes themselves would not have been reviewed and approved by the body. And thus, if something is incorrect in those talking points or bullet points, you run the risk of putting out information that may not have been fully vetted through the public process that we have here in a public meeting. So there's a dance and a balance with that, but I'm happy to explore how we can actually meet that in ensuring folks are more actively engaged and are aware of the progress of the commission in time. But I do want to hesitate on putting forth content that has not been formally vetted ahead of time by the commission and voted on and approved in terms of minutes and actions from this meeting.
Commissioner Richardson?
Don't have anything else to add other than to just say a congratulations and a thank you to Dr. Estes and her staff. A lot of work has been done since the last time we got together. I mean, here we are sitting here having report outs from committees and talking about action next steps and intersectionality. I think that is a huge, huge step and a lot of progress, and I just want to thank you and acknowledge you and your staff.
Commissioner Salas?
I just really want to say thank you to all of you who participated, took all of your day to be here to inform the work that we're doing and to guide us to make it stronger. And I think on the staff level is just to continue to work with community partners in order to ensure participation, attendance, and engagement. So just really want to say thank you again for all you do, but for also being here today.
Other comments? All right, Dr. Estes, we would welcome your thoughts on this set of staff action items or anything else that you think would be appropriate to share.
Thank you, Chair Wood. I mean, I will just say we hear the need for more communication around the activities of the commission and we'll look to increase a little bit more of the presence. Now that we have some branding, it allows us to leverage and build out a different type of presence to increase engagement and awareness of the work of the commission. So it feels good to have some branding to help support that and who the commission is, and that it's something that the commissioners themselves agreed upon and moved forward. So I do see action items and coming from that and creating much more of a collective presence as to the efforts of the commission. I think part of this is form follows function, and we did need to establish committees. We needed to get bylaws moving. We needed to staff up in a way that supports more frequent engagement and interaction, and we are moving into that space of where we'll be able to engage more, continuing to explore, can we do virtual meetings? What does something like that look like for the Racial Equity Commission when, to be quite honest, it takes a lot of time and a lot of people power to host a 1-hour commission meeting versus an 8-hour full day meeting. The amount of work doesn't change. And, with a small but very nimble and powerful staff, we have to continue to ask for grace in the work that we are doing and trying to do this in a way that meets community where they are, also acknowledging the politics that happen throughout these spaces of addressing racial equity, whether you're looking at the national, state, or local levels. And so there's a lot of balancing that the staff as well as commissioners are having to do in these spaces. And again, always wanting to center community and ensuring that we are being responsive to the needs of community. So we very much hear you in the need for more active engagement and being more transparent in kind of the activities that are happening in between these meetings. So thank you for that. I believe we had some action items come out of the data committee in terms of a little bit more thinking about population outcomes, process outcomes, as well as what are those policy systems change outcomes, and how does that more largely sit in the framework. And as we move through these spaces of learning through committee meetings and bringing it back up through the commission, there is a process in how these public bodies work. It is not one thing for a committee to kind of just go off and do its own thing. It is important to adhere to the body and what the body as a full commission wants to move forward. And so it is very hard to do in these spaces where you have to plan a public meeting to do that. And so we're looking for unique ways to bring commissioners together, to bring community together, to have these more in-depth conversations, and to be able to develop out a framework and a product that is responsive to community, but also to those that will be implementing this work moving forward. So local government, state government, as well as community nonprofits and other entities that are out there. We don't see this framework as just for one sector, but more broadly, we see this as something that can be an opportunity to really drive a California for all. So with that, if I missed anything, please forgive my mind, not my heart. And I know the commissioners will let me know if I missed something. But yes, if there's any other action items that I may have missed, please let me know, and we'll make sure that we account for that and bring that forward at our September meeting.
All right, well, that brings this meeting to adjournment. May we adjourn the meeting by a common consent? All right, we're so adjourned. And commissioners, we will meet inside or outside for the picture? No, we need to. No, we're good. So, see y'all later. Safe travels.
Thank you.
You're right.